Hello, true crimerers. This is a true crime in a short amount of time, and it is the case of the Candlelight Killer. Ooh, spooky. Viewer discretion is advised. This is Mr. Robert Liberty. He was born on May 15th, 1947. He spent the majority of his life in and out of hospitals and being treated for psychiatric issues, but he never really got truly the help he really should have gotten. In 1966, Robert tried to take his own life, and obviously he failed. So he was then being treated at the Orange County Medical Center in California. There he met a 31-year-old woman by the name of Marcella Landis. The two of them hit it off, and they became an item. Unfortunately, by the way, I don't have really any other photos other than of Robert himself, so I have no photos of the victims or anything. When Robert and Marcella were released from the hospital, they moved in together. They moved to where Marcella was living previously in her apartment. And that did not last very long. On June 4th, 1966, police had been called to Marcella's apartment. When they walked in, Robert was just playing the guitar, singing along, smiling, and sitting on the couch was his dead girlfriend, Marcella Landis. He had put a Bible on her chest, and then he put lit candles all around her body. He dressed her up in a pretty dress. He applied makeup to her as if this was some sort of ritual. Possibly he was doing a funeral service for her. Well, how did she die? She was manually strangled. And who did it? Robert. Not but a month or so later in August, he was deemed insane. So by a psychiatrist. So he never actually went to any kind of through any kind of murder trial. He was sentenced to a mental institution. He started going to the institution in February of 1967, shortly after the court proceedings. And by 1969, they declared at the hospital that, guess what? He's fixed. He's cured. He's sane now. Shortly after that, he moved to Costa Mesa, California, where he found an apartment with, 3 friends of his. That didn't last long either. One of his roommates was Thomas Astorina, and on March 12th, 1970, the two of them got into some sort of argument where Robert pulled out a gun and shot Thomas and killed him. Thomas was 25 years old, and he was a dad to 2 kids. Robert was he was the suspect, and he knew that because he's the one who did it, but he would flee. He tried to escape. So when he was out on the lam in June of 1970, he met a new girl, and they quickly became, guy and gal, boyfriend and girlfriend. So they found themselves in Long Beach, California. I call it the armpit of California, depending on where you are in Long Beach. They hitchhiked a ride with some 17-year-old kid when Robert pulled out a gun and forced this 17-year-old to drive them to Robert Liberty's mom's house. When they got there, he robbed his own mom. Yeah, he put a gun to her and said, "Give me all your money." She gave him $45, and that's all they got. Then he forced the 17-year-old to drive them down to San Diego, which is probably about a 2.5-hour drive from Long Beach. At this point, by the way, he's also on an FBI, watch list because he fled prosecution. So he's being hunted by police and the FBI. In San Diego, they pulled into a random apartment complex and they broke into someone's apartment, specifically that of 53-year-old Robert Irion. So Robert Liberty and his girlfriend tied up the 53-year-old man, and they began to rummage through his apartment, stealing anything they could find of value. And then Robert Liberty said, fuck it, let's kill him. And he did. He just beat the man to death. He then took his body, laid it on the floor, dressed him up, cleaned him up. He lit candles and put them all around his body. He then wrote on the wall of the room, "The Candlelight Killer strikes again." The 17-year-old was tied up, by the way, in the car that they had been using to force him to drive them places, and they just left him. But eventually that 17-year-old was able to free himself, and he went to police. On June 9th or 10th or so of 1970, the two, Robert Liberty and his little girlfriend, they had fled to Colorado Springs, Colorado. They had then robbed a hotel with a few new people in their little gang, for like $100+, so again, really not much. But it was that caused them to finally get caught and apprehended and finally be charged now with 3 murders, as well as a slew of other charges. Robert Liberty tried to say, "I'm crazy, I did it all because I'm cuckoo, cuckoo, wackadoo." And they're like, get the fuck out of here, guy. But Robert Liberty never got to go to trial, not because he was declared insane, because he was declared murdered. In January of 1971, he was killed by fellow inmates. He was strangled to death by a man named Timothy Dudley. Dudley would then go to trial for the murder, and he would be sentenced to life in prison. And that is it for that story, folks.